buenas tardes, good afternoon. Bienvenidos a Que Pasa Mujer. Welcome to Que Pasa Mujer. We're here another Sunday at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Estamos aquí todos los domingos a las 4 de la tarde. So we're super excited because we have a special guest that we love when he comes to visit. Que Pasa Mujer is a platform where we can talk about anything and everything that we want to talk about. So we love that. So we want to say thank you to our producer, Mark, and to Pot TV for allowing us to do this. I think we're going on 2 years, maybe 3 in September, if I'm not mistaken. We'll have our producer confirm that for us. But we're very excited. Today we have a little bit of a hot topic, but it's a topic that must be discussed. There's a lot of changes, a lot of adjustments, a lot of just things happening in our world here in the United States and outside of the United States. So we're going to go ahead and bring our guest, Vidal Dickerson, on. And I love Vidal because your name kind of sounds Hispanic almost a little bit. So I would say Vidal Dickerson, you know. But thank you for being with us today, Vidal. As always, we always look forward to your knowledge, your wisdom, and the time that you give us every time you come on the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me back. I appreciate being here.
Yes, I love it. I wanted you to tell us a little bit about that background because I mentioned it to you before we came on the show. But tell, because as I think the audience knows, I love puzzles. That's my hobby. When I one day retire, maybe
Yeah,
that's what I will be doing with a magnifying glass, finding the pieces because I like to do the big ones. So
yeah,
tell us a little bit about your background.
yeah. So this is actually a foam board. It's an activity that I have to help, particularly folks who are just meeting each other and connecting to each other, wanting to learn more about each other. So actually, what I've done is take just a puzzle from, I think I just Googled it and just got it amplified, but I also cut it out. And so what each person will have a piece of the puzzle where they put things around their values, things are important to them, maybe a phrase, a slogan, scripture, something that's important to them. And then what happens is everyone has to, again, put the entire puzzle together. So it's an activity just to kind of share values, but also to kind of connect people also. Yeah, so I've used it for a few times. And it's really gone over well. I think the worst part is trying to cut out through that foam board, but it's really cool activity there. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love, we've had a guest before on the show. Her name is Michelle, and she does circles. So that it's an indigenous tradition of just
Uh-huh.
having conversation. So they have like healing circles,
Yeah.
talking circles, and they do it a
Mhm.
lot for social justice. So that's one of the things, everybody inputs into the circle and into the conversation. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of the times, we're so divided at times that actually we really sit down and talk and dialogue.
Hmm.
We really find out how many things we have in common more than the things that we don't.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
definitely. So
Wonderful.
we wanted to say hello to Tangi because she just came on and we haven't seen her in a couple of weeks. She's one of our watchers. She's a faithful fan. So we're going to get right to the nitty gritty, Vidal. We wanted to talk a little bit about what's happening here in the United States with diversity, inclusion, all the hot topics, all the riots that are going on. And sometimes we think it's just happening here, but it's really affecting everyone in the entire world. Myself, I'm Colombian. I was born in Colombia. Then I lived in Mexico for about 5 years. I'm 47 today, and I got to the United States when I was about 9. But I tell everybody I'm 40. I just said my birthday was in March, and I told them I was 41, but I'm really 47. But I say all of that because being a naturalized citizen,
Hmm.
it's fearful for me at times because you just don't know the things that can potentially happen. And I still have family in my country. I still have family in other countries as well. And
Yeah.
so this may affect, it affects me in general also because I do a lot of work with the community. And so I wanted you to talk a little bit about the fears that are happening. Usually I like to kind of study certain situations and why they're happening. And
Sure.
it has been my experience that a lot of things happen because of fear, because of anxiety, right?
Yep.
Is the unknown, or the whole concept are, are you seeing it half empty or half full? So I wanted
Mhm.
you to tell us a little bit about how this is affecting us on the mental, right? Our mental health is being at risk here because of everything that's happening, even if it doesn't happen to us directly. So I wanted you to speak a little bit
Yeah.
about
Yeah. And there's so many layers to it. And I do appreciate you bringing out, particularly the piece about the unknown. I think one, and I'll try to scale it out, but even just the language that we're using around diversity, equity, inclusion now is language that we're even sometimes afraid or dare not to use in some spaces because of the way it's interpreted by the White House, particularly. And so, one thing that we've noticed, and this is both not in higher ed, of course, but also in other circles, you find people that are just trying to scrub the language, mean just take it away, take it from the websites, take it away from the companies. But what's been happening is that you're scrubbing, but not replacing it. And so there's this void and this vacuum that exists because we don't know how to talk about things. Um, and so if we don't know how to talk about and communicate, even things that are basically going on with us, you can just imagine that amplifies this fear and concern. And that's one of the big worries that I have because even when we talk about it, there's sometimes a miscommunication or different perspectives around it. But then even now, we're afraid to even mutter the words in any settings, and rightfully so, because again, we've had examples of different institutions, different organizations just been targeted with anything related to diversity, equity, inclusion. Um, so again, and this been some time, so we've seen this, where you have corporations that are supposedly rolling back on things, especially those who organizations that have ties to federal money. We have a lot of institutions that have had federal money positions tied to federal monies that we've actually lost. Um, I think the other piece too is I think we should, I think we are now definitely taking serious the Project 2025 when it came out. And this was out some time ago, and there were some things that were laid out. And I don't think many took it serious. And when I say many, I'm talking about those in leadership because it came from our current president. I think they were just saying, "Oh, that's just an ambitious or listing." We don't have to take that serious. But we're seeing things happen. DEI. We're seeing things related to immigration. We're seeing just so much happening, and so it's almost like it's attacking us, and we don't know how to respond. There is no strategic way in a lot of spaces to respond to these things that are happening, and I worry about those who feel not only just anxious but helpless. Um, just feel like they're waiting for the next ball to drop. Um, the other piece that I worry about, because so many people in communities are so concerned and they're fearful, that they're kind of closing in, and you're seeing such division now. And one that worries me is actually even around citizenship. So, for instance, I'm seeing where there are examples of, well, I was born in the States, so I'm different from that person who's an immigrant. Well, wait a minute, I'm an immigrant and I was naturalized. So I'm different from those who, may have come from whatever circumstances or are trying to escape, poverty or harm. And so we're making these lines and these delineations, even within our own racial and ethnic communities. And then even across groups, I've been concerned about there's been an interesting conversation. They've been calling it the Black Brown conversation around protests, where some of our Latin American colleagues are saying, "Well, wait a minute, African Americans, where are you um, in this? Hey, we're in the streets, we're protesting, we were there and present for you. So where are you in this around this issue? Are you present? Are you supporting?" And so I'm worried about how all this chaos that's around us has created all this tension and this friction to some degree. Now, I will say the positive thing that I'm seeing, and I would never imagine the courts being positive, but we are seeing a number of cases that are hitting the courtrooms that are battling, um, even language around DEI, taking away funding. Um, Corporations are trying to battle back. So there's just so much happening. But I've appreciated how those who are trying to find ways to combat these things are taken to the courts. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
see Maddie.
It's a lot going on. One of the things as you were talking, I was, kind of processing everything that you were saying.
Yeah.
Um, Maddie's about to join us too as well. So she can join the conversation. Hi, Maddie. How are you?
Hi guys, how you been? How are you?
Good, good, good to see you, Maddie.
Nice to see you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, so one of the things that you were saying, Vidal, the whole anxiety, the fear of, voicing, right? So I wanted you to talk a little bit about the perspective of young people, right? The people that are in our universities, our colleges. What message are we sending them? Because sometimes maybe our generation, we might feel like, we have to be cautious with our voice.
Sure.
What have you seen in reference to young people? And because that's one of the things, right? We don't want to lose our voice.
Hmm.
We want to be tactful about our voices being heard, because you have a lot of young people whose families are immigrants, but they were born here.
Yeah.
So they come from a generation of immigrants, but they were born here. They are natural born citizens. So their perspective might be a little bit different. And it's not just the Latino young people, but just every background. So I wanted you to tell us a little bit about that, because to me, that has been the issue for years, right? Just for everyone to have a voice, for us
Yeah.
to have justice, and the voice piece that kind of stood out to me as you were talking.
Yeah. And I appreciate the young folks are the ones who are taking the charge. Um, when I think about those who, again, have been very vocal about not only what they're experiencing, but what they're wanting to see, they are the younger generations. So even when I think about it in the college settings, there is concern that particularly some families or students with families who may feel vulnerable. But what's also happened in the college setting is that the voice and the platforms the students have had, they still exist. So now employment has been impacted. Sometimes research and other academic areas may have been impacted. But the student voice, they're using the access to speech, expression. The protests are being led by, these young folks. Even if those who are guiding are from older generations, but those voice of individuals are coming, who are accessing social media in a powerful way. Um, but I also can't discount how they're witnessing just examples of folks, especially the way the media kind of portrays being quote unquote snatched up, and being concerned about, even if could I be mistaken for someone, and could I be taken away in some way, or if my family is taken away, like what is it going to mean for us? How do we even combat that? And I think that's the piece that's so challenging now, because again, everything is happening so fast. So how do we develop strategy? How do we respond? Um,
Mhm.
and this is a generation that's already been kind of anxious,
Mhm.
uh, always powerful, always connected, always social justice minded, but have also have dealt with just such anxiety. And so I appreciate the point you're making that um, many times our young people like to run, 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 fight, 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 fight. Um, but how do you repair and heal from all of that? You know,
Mhm.
and so I don't know the answer to that yet, because I think again we're still seeing some early pieces, and then a lot of things have actually happened as we in kind of end of the year and then into the summer. So folks are dispersed into their own communities, kind of finding access and voice, and want to combat a lot of things that they're seeing harming their communities and particularly their families.
Mhm. Yeah. I also just talking to people just in general and just coming in contact with other organizations as well in the
Yeah,
community. I think we're starting to see a little bit of distrust within certain institutions,
yeah,
because certain institutions may have an agenda, or they're being pushed for their agenda to change.
yeah,
And maybe, let's say, as a professor, you might not believe in that, but because you work for them, or you have to kind of like apply certain things. I work with an organization over the summertime, and this was the first year that they asked me the background of the students that I was working with. So, like, how
mm,
many are African American, how many are Caucasian, how many are like Hispanic, how many, so this was the first year that they kind of asked me that question.
yeah,
um, And I think, it's probably, collecting enough data. And I just wanted you to tell us a little bit about that and how that's affecting us. Because, people are trying to keep their jobs, but at the same time, it's finding that fine line between your personal beliefs and your morals and all that as well. And also, not only you, but like you're representing or what you're bringing back home when you make
Mhm.
decisions like that, when you stay in a place that has these beliefs that don't match up with yours.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. You're all over my research. I studied, it's this concept called moral distress. And it's basically when you feel this tension between your own values and you feel constrained by like the organization or the institution that you're a part of. And we all feel it to some degree. Like if you're part of an organization or corporation, sometimes they're going to make decisions that really don't align with you. It kind of rubs you, but we have just different thresholds. We have certain limits what we can have. But you are right. We're in settings where our institutions are quiet, where we're wanting folks, particularly the institutions that we care about and we spend a lot of time with, we're wanting them to say something. How are we going to approach this? How are we going to combat, some of these things? And then you also have those that may be retreating because, maybe their funding has been challenged. Um, I think the other piece that we're seeing, and this is such an important piece to consider, because although we're experiencing what we're recognizing as chaos, this is very organized, very organized. We have national organizations that are helping facilitate, entering different spaces to make sure that if they said that they have dissolved some of the DEI efforts, that they're entering those spaces to kind of investigate. And these are even citizens that are entering these spaces. Um, it was an institution that I worked with in North Carolina. There was this, citizen coming and asking questions about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Um, Recorded the conversation, and that went viral. And I think there was actually a place where you can look at all these investigations and these video clips that they have. I say that to say, it's kind of a top down, up, out, approach, because you have individuals that are, again, not in leadership capacities, but may be considered citizens that are doing this work as well. So it is challenging for us. I think a number of individuals, particularly who are trying to lead this work, are leaving the field because you don't have necessarily support. And many times, if an institution has to make a decision between their money and then sometimes their people, or even certain ideas and causes, they may go with the money. And so we're
Mhm.
seeing some of that,
Yeah.
unfortunately, in a disappointing way. Um, but even organizations are fearful, and they're making decisions based on fear as well. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Maddie, have you noticed anything in your realm? Because I know a lot of you come in contact with a lot of people from the community. What type of examples have you seen of people showing fear or the mistrust or distrust from institutions?
Oh, definitely. I see it on a daily basis. I mean, I work in the banking industry. So where you had clients that had, checking accounts and savings accounts, everybody's depleting all their savings accounts, closing out savings account, minimizing their checking account, sometimes even closing them. I had tons of clients sending all of their money that they had in their accounts to their countries, even though they were still here, because they were anticipating, okay, if I get sent back to my country, at least my money is there, or, asking me questions. What do I do? What happens if this happens? Kind of playing different scenarios so that they can plan accordingly and say, okay, this is what best works for me, So unfortunately, I see it every day. Every day, I had a client that came in and they were in panic mode because their roommate had gone to the court for a parking ticket, and the minute he left from the parking ticket, he got home that same night. ICE came to the apartment and got him. So, I don't know if it was coincidence. I can't, like, we don't know, but that's exactly what happened. He got off the one, but then they picked him up for something else and they deported him. So, so I see it all the time, and it is so sad. And I was just gonna ask Vidal, if there was any like what kind of support system is in place, there for the students, because again, in the community we see it, and as much as we, like, at least for me, it's like, how can I help? It's like, what can I do to be a support, for you, other than, maybe give you instructions, or, connect you with somebody else. But is there any support system in for college students, that are going through a situation like this?
Yeah. And support is multiple levels. And so many times, particularly when I think about support, um, just as we started out kind of talking about like where they are in terms of mental health and all these other elements too, those are structures that are already naturally in place. What I don't know, and then again, and this is also because there have been many new executive orders and other pieces that have kind of dismantled some of the limitations that existed in colleges and universities. Those limits don't exist anymore. So if there are individuals that want to come to pursue our students, ICE particularly, we don't have that barrier anymore. And quite honestly, we're not just my institution, but higher ed, they're still trying to figure this piece out, because again, you have other entities, like even we have folks going to the courtroom that are trying to at least protect and support um, from ICE. And I haven't necessarily had examples yet from higher ed. I mean, we've had students that have been deported because they've been out, like in the field, maybe protesting. But I haven't come across much yet as individuals or ICE particularly coming to campuses. How that's coordinated, I'm just not really sure. And then what does support look like in that manner? Because many times we can support them as we're engaging, we can support them as they're anticipating things. Sometimes we can support a student post-event. I don't know what we have in place, higher ed, to respond to an ICE raid. I honestly don't. I have no idea.
Yeah, because it affects the entire family, not just the students, or whoever it is, whoever their support system is, they all get affected by it. And you bring a good point, Maddie, in reference to the economic disruption that this is happening, right?
Yeah.
And it's affecting. So, like, if I'm sending all of my money back to my country, or what is that doing for investments? What is that doing for interest rates? What is that doing for the banking industry? What is that doing for young people as well, in reference to them being able to get credit cards like they normally did before? So all of that is like this, it's kind of like a domino effect of everything that is happening, and how it just affects all of us. It is unfortunate that we don't have things in place. I think in the past we kind of have done a pretty good job at being proactive at things, but I feel today we don't really know kind of like where we stand, because we don't really know what's really happening. But some people, like you said, Maddie, are starting to be proactive in reference to taking their money out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate to do that, but I can see why.
Yeah, we have everybody preparing for the worst, for worst case scenario, in case something happens. At least they know how to react. But yeah, it's very disheartening, and like, I don't know, it makes you feel very powerless, and it's like, how do I, like I always talk about, it's hard to explain to somebody that can't relate, or that hasn't been through that, or that doesn't have somebody going through a similar situation, to make him understand how it feels. And sometimes it's like, you know, I try to talk out loud to my teammates, because sometimes, you have to have those conversations, and kind of like let them out. And I talk to my teammates, and I'm like, this is what I'm feeling. This is how I feel, and this is hard because of X, Y, and Z, and and I appreciate just the listening part. And of course, I had like one of my teammates, she's Caucasian, and she's like, this might be a dumb question, but can I ask you this? And just those little things are appreciated, because she is trying to understand, what I'm expressing, and probably what those people are maybe going through, because they are our clients, and we see them every day, and you don't know, you wouldn't know what's going on, and then you're like, this is happening, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know a couple of people, they've had conversations about power of attorneys, so they're starting
Ah,
to do power of attorneys
mhm.
with family members that are here, mainly the undocumented people, also temporary custody, because if the parent gets deported, but the kids are left here, who are they going to go with? So a lot of people are being proactive when it comes to that. I know I have personally been approached to see if I could, be in the transaction of a power of attorney, because of the unknown, and it is unfortunate. Vidal, I wanted you to talk a little bit more because I know you touched on it a little bit, the social division that we're experiencing. Um, uh, to know that I am Latina and I'm a um, I'm a naturalized citizen, and at this time, whether I'm Colombian or whatever, like I feel like I'm Latina, so I'm like. I am celebrating and I'm embracing all of Latinos, right? And really, it really all of immigrants. I am personally, because I feel the pain. I try to act and have empathy for everyone that's in that situation. But I know that there are some divisions, because even for the people that are not affected, it's like they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Um, it's like, how do I respond? Like your friend Maddie that is Caucasian. Okay, so like I have this question, but not everybody may have a Maddie in their life to ask those questions. So then I guess we see it as a social division, but it's because they don't have that platform to be able to know what to do or what to say, or to
Mm-hmm.
really know why this is happening or why those people are reacting the way that they are.
Yeah. And it's a couple things too. And what my mind also went back to, okay, we're experiencing these pieces now, kind of this division and hesitation, and we were still spiraling from 2020. When you think about the summer, uh, very vocal. And when I say in the streets, protest, really active, engaged. Um, there was fatigue from that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean on multiple levels, and then to enter another phase where again we're calling on really communities, far and wide, please, let's be a solid voice for these different elements. And you do see communities that are retreating. And yes, I do see these kind of, I've been calling them delineations. It's also described in some area called delineation, really just making the fine line. I'm different from who they are, and my experience is different from what they're experiencing, and being very vocal about that. And that's across multiple racial and ethnic groups. And it feels like it's not only this fear and self-preservation type thing. Um, in some places, it's maybe even rooted in what may be considered competition, competition for resources, competition for so many different other elements within maybe a community. And I think that's been the unfortunate piece. I think it's also the element that is kind of keeping us from coming together in like what we experienced, in an earlier stage, where we could come together. We have this common union. We have this issue that's impacting all of us. Let's come together. Let's move forward. Let's develop a plan. My piece now is who's leading this. That's not as clear right now. Where I'm looking at the kind of the thought leaders and the active energy and the batteries for those who are coordinating these efforts around diversity, equity, inclusion, immigration, et cetera. I'm not seeing the same type of leader or body of leaders that are helping to kind of combat. And I think that's one of the things that are maybe a different from the earlier kind of protest energy that we had or resistance that we've had. Like who's leading these charges? And I think now, rather than having these large national voices, it looks like we're back ground level to having community voices. I think the voices are still there. I think people are still fighting. Um, I worry that the voices aren't as loud as we once were situated, to have them be. Um, and the thing is, too, I know, and we're talking, I know it's just a bad place to be in. Um, I do think something will be revealed in time. Like a lot of this is happening. It's happening fast. Um, but it can't go on. Like there are things that are necessary for us to kind of live and maintain. I don't know, especially when the dust clears and when new leadership is in place, because again, we're looking at in the states, we're looking at some transition of governors from state levels, other local leaders. We're looking at possibly, if we do have new leadership, how can that new energy, that new support kind of help with galvanizing, some of these things. There's still a way to fight, but I think there's a way to at least have some leadership that are situated, particularly in a political place, to help navigate some of these things. Yeah, but I do think the division has been unfortunate, but I do see it as, just as you said, Matt, it's a place being afraid, but also I'm trying to preserve. I'm trying to preserve myself. I'm concerned about my family right now. I need to worry about my unit. I do believe that this cause should be fought, but right now I need to make sure my people are in place. And where's the energy, the extra energy that's required to kind of combat some of these larger national pieces?
I was gonna say, I also think, sometimes, like when we're trying to expose something and we speaking from, from self, it's like you're out there trying to make people understand, but how much do I put out there that's not gonna come back and bite me, And it's like, okay, I want to fight. I want to make this be known. People need to know this. I know that if people understood my story, they would understand what's going on. But then by doing that, am I putting myself out there, and is it gonna come back, to reflect negatively in my life? So that's hard too.
And you hit on, and one quick one too, because you brought up allies, and allies have been an interesting conversation too around this time, because you have individuals that maybe care, they see things are happening, and they want to extend some care. And one thing, in particular, there's been a couple of higher ed spaces we've noticed that the kind word may not be enough now, especially when that was their only tool. Like the cliches, oh, it'll be all right. Well, there's madness right now. I mean, we're in the real. And one of the things that this is actually with some fellow DEI professionals, diversity, equity, inclusion professionals, how we even have to find ways to equip our allies, kind of in the ways that you're talking about, just even if it's information or just understanding what's happening either with myself, my family, or just within the system. But you'll have those that want to extend some care and support, but may not know how to go about it in some ways. And so sometimes allies can get away with, again, the cliches, saying some things that, again, the pat on the back and et cetera, which may still be needed in this time. But when we're looking around, and just as we said, we're tired, or we need to exert so much energy in these other places, like where are these allies? And again, I think that's where, even when I heard with the protests, it's like, wait a minute, Black community, where are you? We were there before. What happened? Where are these please? Asian Americans, where are you? And so we're looking at even allies across racial and ethnic groups to say, like what's happening at this point? And everybody is in a frenzy. Like everybody's afraid, or everybody's trying to preserve themselves right now.
Mm-hmm. And I think also the possible fear of, like if I attend this riot, are the immigration, is it going to be enforced? Is it going to be enforced even more, right? Because we're doing all these things. So are we doing this and things are going to get worse for people? Are we going to have more tension? Because I don't know if people riot different today than back in the day, and how is administration responding to it as we do it today? So I think it's that fear as well of making things worse.
I agree with that too. And I'll tell you one question I even had too with a lot of protests that was happening, particularly in California, around the ICE raids. There was what was it called? Like the large effort that was on, I think it was the president's birthday, and then it was like a parade. I forgot the name of it. But you had folks that were, rallying to have a presence, to show resistance there. And I did have a question: Is it is showing up protesting maybe our government leader and against who he is, what he stands for? Is that the same as showing up for the Latin American community in that space? And I was seeing that there was a presence again at the same time, but it was also, if I'm anti White House, is that the same as I'm pro Latin American Hispanic community during this time, this experience that they have? And I think sometimes it can be the same, but I also worried about how I felt that the issue around ICE got lost because there was such a focus on the president's birthday or something about the parade. And that worried me for a while, especially when it came to allies and those who wanted to step forward in some organized way. Yeah, so no kings allowed. Gotcha. Markley, thank you for that.
Oh, that's what it was called? Yeah, that's it's just the whole fear thing always makes me feel some type of way because it's just the root cause of so many things and it prevents us from doing so many things. And I was even asking you before the show started, what is this going to look like on a lesson plan, right? When our kids are in high school and they're learning about this time and how this is affecting people. And I just think that, what are some things that you think we could do in reference to conversations with our young people at home? What would be two things that you would want to make sure that we talk about at home with our children?
Mm-hmm. I think two pieces. One, I'm thinking impact again. Like, we're still trying to figure out what's going to happen with the government, how the government's moving. But I think at some point when we're ready to talk about history, we should be understanding that. I do think it's important for us to see not only and have an understanding of young people to what degree what's happening nationally in terms of a movement, like how all these things are rooted from these decisions and how that's done from a leader and how a leader is impacting, but then also family and locally, like how such a thing is showing up and how it's having an impact even within our homes. So kind of making sense of this ripple, this large ripple that's occurring. Many of them may not get federal policy and things of that sort, but there is a decision being made that's having a national impact. And then for us, this is how it looks, or it's how it's impacting our families. And then the other piece is, and it's this whole idea of bearing witness, and it's come up in civil rights, but it's looking at our situation fully. And when I say that, there are some bad things in there, but I do think that there's some hope that's also in there. So how can we also talk about the situation, particularly young folks, to see the seriousness, to see the harm, but also how can we see that even within this, there's some learning, there's going to be some innovation, there is a new type of voice that's coming up. I think we have to show how we're equipping ourselves in a different way now, because even the old ways that we combat it, maybe laws and policies, may not operate in the same way now. And so we're having to equip ourselves with information, but also don't discount how we're feeling, how we're impacted, and what we're seeing, and how those things are linked. And I'll say my last piece of that's so important now, because even when we look at histories, and this has come up even with college students aren't making the connect between maybe a decision that's having a ripple of an effect. And so they even disconnect from history itself, because they're living in the now, they're living in what they can see, but not recognizing that there are pieces that have been in place that are now having an impact on what we're seeing and feeling right now. And I think that's why I kind of approached it in that way.
Yeah, because we're going to be here for a long time, but I don't want to send the message of, we're being abandoned, right? We're
Yeah.
being, so it's kind of like finding that balance of kind of like we're going through a hard time. Let's make sure that we do our part, whatever that looks like, for each
Mhm.
household, and just to be empathetic and to be aware of your surroundings and the things that you might be saying, um, or doing to, because you don't know how people are going to respond or what they're going through at home. So I think, just being in the school system, um, I don't know if teachers are being trained to have certain conversations or to have a plan in place when
Mhm.
such things happen, or if a kid comes to you and they said, this happened, or at home, or whatever those situations are. I don't know if we're training our leaders within different institutions, organizations, to deal with those situations if you have a student that just comes to you with a certain situation.
Yeah. One thing that's fascinating, I think we kind of talked about this too a little bit. Um, One of the things that is coming up in terms of trainings across all different types of industry, and just have different names: constructive dialogue, inclusive dialogue, um, civil discourse, all these different elements. And these are things that have been coming up and bubbling up, um, partly because you have individuals that have different ideas and we don't know how to engage with them. And the thing is, I don't say agree with them, when I say engage, but, how do we, because this is another example, there's a lot of us that are angry, but at some point, we got to be at a table to solve this stuff. And so, how do we get that information? How do we situate ourselves? How can, even in a setting where those I'm looking across who I feel don't have my best interest at heart, I still have to engage because I have to find a way for either myself or my people. And so, the ideas of learning how to engage in a civil way doesn't mean that you don't have to, combat and have your protest voice. But when we get to a place of developing a remedy, now we're going to need folks who are skilled at doing that. And sometimes those aren't the loud folks in the streets. Now we need them in the streets, but also when we come to the table, we need to be equipped to do that. And so I've been seeing more around civil discourse, constructive dialogue, even helping folks come together in the community. Because also a powerful thing that I'm seeing very slowly are like even these folks who have been at odds politically are looking at the world and like, I don't recognize this, I don't understand this, I'm not aligned with this, and are finding a place. Um, and I'm hoping that at some point we'll begin to see that again, racially and ethnically. I'm curious about what the faith community is seeing and understanding about what's going on now. Um, but I do see at least some glimmer. And it's partly, again, because we're sharing this fear and we're sharing this concern. And I think at some point we're going to have to come together to see how we're going to move past this stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting. As you said, who's leading, because we don't know, and that's such an important key to kind of knowing where we're going to go, or how this is going to end up. Maddie, I wanted to go back a little bit to the financial piece. You do see people removing their money and activities such as that. What are some things that you think we should be doing? Should we save more, spend less? What are some things that we could do just in general as households to prepare for the worst and maybe not?
You know, I think the one thing that I've learned when sharing financial information with other people, it's planning. Like we plan for so many things. We plan when okay, it's time to have a baby. Okay, let me start saving for when the baby goes to college. Okay, I want to buy a house. I want to retire. But we don't plan for worst case scenario. We don't plan to die when we know that all that's needed to die is to be alive, and everybody's gonna die, but we don't think about those things because it's like, oh, bad luck or whatever. We don't plan for that, but that's going to happen. So the older we get, it's not going to get any easier, and it will happen. So those are things that you have to plan for. So I think in this situation, same thing, also talking to clients and the people that are going through it, plan. How can we plan, for worst case scenario? What is my backup? We were talking about allies. You were talking about being pulled for power of attorneys. Like build those relationships with people. I had one of my business clients, probably one of the first clients that I met when I started working at the bank 19 years ago, and he used to do carpets and floor. That's how he started working, and now he has a huge business, and I don't even know how many employees, and he does all these things, and he has rental property, but he's undocumented, and it's like he's like, I don't know what to do. And then I remember, like, when I met him, he didn't have kids. Now he has 3 kids. And I remember he brought his oldest to the bank, and he's like, I knew the boy, but I never, hadn't seen him. He's like 17 now. And he's like, this is Maddie. So if anything ever happens to me, you come see Maddie, and it was one of those things. And that hit me so hard, because it was like, oh my God, it's happening, and, I know it's not easy for him because, as a parent, as a father, you are the provider, you are the head. If my child needs something, I'm here for them. And then for him to have to prepare his children for, I won't be here, but these are the people that can be here for you, that can help you, that was, I think, like the first time that, it really hit me. But again, I guess plan, know who your resources are. Sometimes, again, as a parent, writing things down, okay, if you need a contact at the bank, this is the person you're going to go to. If you need an attorney or something, you might not be old enough to get an attorney, go to the church and find the pastor and let them put you in contact with so and so, like those things, especially if you have children that are young adults but not quite adults, because that's the case too. We see that a lot, again, the college kids, the children may have been born in the US, they live here, but the parents are not. The high school children, like, what do we do if we get deported? Those children that maybe came here when they were young age, and they don't know what it is to live in another country, and then all of a sudden they have to decide, do I stay living here because this is what I know, or do I go back to this country that I know nothing about and I won't even know what to do, probably not even proficient in the language, so I think, planning is going to be huge, and planning for worst case scenarios, so that when it happens, oh, it's not that bad. I planned for worse and it didn't happen, but at least we are prepared, But, this subject is so sensitive, because it's like, it doesn't matter if it happens at a small capacity or a big capacity, it still has a huge impact. If you're removed from your known surroundings, it's going to have a huge impact, whether you are in a good position or in a bad position, because it's changing, like you said, Viviana, the life of everyone that's around you.
Yeah, those are really good points, Maddie. Thank you, because it makes me think about, whether this is happening or not. Hey, like, I should have a power of attorney, right? I should have some money in the bank. My family members should know who my point of contact is at the bank. So all of these things, and, with social media today or artificial intelligence, you could easily go online and, how do you prepare for financial stability or whatever it may be, right? So I think this is a time where we can really come together as family, right? The people that are under the same roof, and have these conversations with everyone there. What is the plan if the electricity goes out and I can't contact you via cell phone? Where are we meeting? It doesn't matter what time of the day. So it's having those conversations. Where are the important papers that we need, the important documentations, people's phone numbers, just everything that we need to get in contact with people. So like for myself, it's my mother, my grandmother, my children. So it's like we have to talk about a plan. Like, I know my mom and my grandmother and I have talked about it, but not necessarily my kids. So that's something that, as we're having this conversation, it's being the advice. I'm receiving the advice as well, because we have to have these conversations. We entrust so much to our cell phones, but what if one day that phone doesn't turn on and we can't connect? Do I still know your phone number? Like I still know my ex-husband's social security number. You just never know. you know um but it's just important to have these conversations and maybe put some important things on a piece of paper, and just kind of keep it in a safe place. But definitely, Maddie, I appreciate that you said that, because it's all about the planning. And it goes back to every time you always say about getting educated. We have to get educated to be able to plan, to be able to plan for this. And then, of course, we don't want to impact our $3.7 trillion that Latinos contribute to the economy. We want that number to continue to go up. Yes, definitely. And so I believe that this is something temporary that we're going through. And sometimes things need to be exposed
Mhm.
so we can kind of get a fresh start on things. And I'm hoping that that's what's happening. It's just a time of exposure to clean up and just let's clean in, let's start fresh, once the season is over.
I certainly agree with that. And I wonder, going back to a question you asked about the history again, who's keeping record of this time? I'm hoping our writers, our poets, our creatives, whoever they are, video, visual artists, are archiving what's happening, so we can look back and have this perspective. I think that's going to be so important too. Yeah.
Definitely. I think that's very important, because our the times that we're living, we have the most data, the most pictures, the most images. We don't do the albums anymore, so everything is digital. My son has millions of pictures, that are being stored on social media or just on his cell phone. But we have a lot of data, and like you said, Vidal, who's collecting it, and how is it going to be transposed to our youth in a couple of years, and then we'll be old and we'll say, oh my god, I was alive when that happened. Let me tell you the truth, because that's not the book didn't talk about that. So we'll have those conversations. But yeah, it's very interesting. And I just for me, the takeaway is really what Maddie said, to just plan for this. And Vidal, all the wisdom that you gave us today in reference to being in tune with my household, right? Yes, be aware of what's going on outside, but let's make sure that this is taken care of. Because I think if everybody takes care of it internally, then maybe when it comes out, like everybody will be okay, in some capacity. But I just think it's just having those conversations, being informed, and just kind of knowing what's going on, and accept that it is fear, accept that it is anxiety, accept that these things could happen. But let's think about solutions, not problems, and how can we be proactive to be able to respond accordingly. So
Yeah. Great.
I think that was great.
Yeah. Agree 100%. I think, I don't think anything will be deleted from history because of the way of everything that we have. Everybody has pictures, camera.
Yeah.
Facebook doesn't delete anything. The internet, everything exists on there. So I think this is a moment in history, in our history, as a country, as individuals, that is gonna exist forever. And you mentioned, artists, that's kind of like one of the biggest ways that we can protest as being artists, whether you're a songwriter or a poet, like our music also reflects a lot of what's happening in our society and the times. And I mean, we can see that. We can go back and listen to songs, older songs, and we know exactly what the country was going to, or what our community was going through at that time. And I think, again, when we were talking about, having a voice, having an outlet, I just came back from a big national competition of poetry, and that was it's beautiful to see people get up there and speak their stories, talk about their stories, and let their voices be heard. Because again, we're talking about having the conversations, putting the topics out there. You are not going to know what I'm going through if I don't tell you. And the story comes out differently than me telling you about my friend who's going through this, than me telling you my story. This is what I live with, and this is what I go through. it's two different ways of expressing the story, but it's going to have a bigger impact if you are empowered enough to go out there and tell your story from the bottom of your heart. So always thankful for that. And again, this is a moment in history that's not going to be forgotten.
I agree. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I appreciate your time, Vidal. And I just love it when you come on because you give us this perspective, a well-rounded perspective. And you always got me thinking about, what do I think about that? So I love it when you come on.
Yeah. And even same for me. I mean, you ask some very good questions. I even have to come back and think, like, wait a minute, how do we do that? How should we approach that? So I benefit as well. So I really appreciate you all. So thank you. Really
Yes, thank you. And our producer said, "A change is going to come" is an excellent example of a
Sam
song
Cooke.
about history like Sam Cooke. So it's still very relevant today. So yeah. Well, they say history repeats itself. So here we go again. Um, Maddie, it's your time. So we're gonna I think listen to a poem.
So
Um,
So
yes.
today, I had a poem, but I think because of what we're talking about, the subject matter. One of my favorite poets. She has a poem called "Borders." The poet's name is Elizabeth Freeman. She's an educator. She's an activist, and she is amazing. And I think it's a perfect way of addressing the topic that we're talking about today. So this poem that Mark is going to play for us is called "Border" by by Denise Freeman.
We're ready, Mark.
It starts before she gets here. Before the stairs tell her she's alien to a country that knows her great-grandfather's Mexican hands all too well. His fingerprints still echo underneath railroad tracks and cotton fields from Texas to California, where bent knees and bent hands once picked, plucked, pushed work for more money than he was used to, but less than he deserved. For Ana Maria, it begins before the border. She walks with her two uncles through the desert for 1 week with nothing more than a few gallons of water and a prayer tucked into their pockets, hoping both will last them long enough. The sun is an unforgiving God, but any God is worth having right now. The wind pushing at their backs, the grunt of gunshots from drug cartels, and the desperation of a job to employ their stomachs. Both have been uninvited guests at their doorstep. So they step. Ana Maria's small hand clutches the bottom of her abuela's dress. Her mother waits for her on the other side, hoping that her face still sings of home like it used to. Another step. She is too young to know what border means. She thinks that people are just family members who haven't met yet. After her family arrives, she will learn that there are some borders you can't cross by foot. Ana Maria is now 10 years old. She's learned enough English to translate for her parents, but says that her thick accent is still a problem she tries to fix by leaving in her locker. When the teacher calls on her to read, she tries to speak proper, like proper has a sound. She pushes her tongue down so it doesn't roll her R's, but she trips on the flatness of the syllables that bounce with too much salsa. She tries to rattle out the kinks in her speech, but her tongue is a stubborn dancer. The two boys behind her don't know how to do long division, but they know what a wetback is. And that Ana Maria has braids, and that Ana Maria's hair is thicker than their sisters. And they don't know how they know, but they know how to treat difference when they smell it. So they say things like, "Yo, go back to your country," as if their Irish ancestors never walked through Ellis Island. Ana Maria is now 16. Her father works 18-hour days as a dishwasher. Her mother cleans houses she'll never get to live in so that Ana Maria can sit in a college classroom and say, "I am here." But her guidance counselor tells her she can't get financial aid or the in-state tuition rate because of her status. She says it like an apology. Ana wonders if her family ever crossed the border or if they are just stuck inside another one, aggravating it like a sore. Her guidance counselor stands in front of her with a mouth full of fences. There are some borders you can't cross by foot. But borders, I tell her, that can only be crossed by stubborn backbones. So when they ask you for your papers, Anna, show them your skin, wear your tongue like a cape, throw up your fist like a secret you can't keep any longer. They can't keep you any longer. Afraid you can't ever afford to rob or dream. So when they come for you, tell them in the language that you know best that you are not scared anymore.
That was right on point. There are so many Ana Marias in this world, yeah. And you know, it made me think about the borders and how we create our own borders at times.
That's what I
And
said.
then
There's
I have to work
borders
around
across.
your border. Yeah, I love that poem. That was amazing. That was great. Right on point, Maddie, as always.
That was
I'm
powerful.
actually gonna. Can you send me the link because I want to listen to that like again and again and share it with other people as well. But yes, thank you again. I hope that you guys have an amazing week, as Tangi would say, on purpose. And we will be here again on Sunday at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Maddie, again, thank you. Vidal, thank you. Mark and Pat TV, thank you again for this platform and having this time with us because it's very unique and we greatly appreciate it. We definitely don't take it for granted. But thank you so much, guys.
Are just so impressed with them. Like I said, we've been with them for years. I will recommend and refer anyone to them. We stand by A+ academics. They're the best.
A+ tutorial really did help me with all my grades. They all went up when I came to this place. And I would say I recommend this school to everyone.
So it's a really good environment to be in, especially for me because it makes me look up to my parents.
If you have students that need academic help, A+ Academics is the place to be. A+ Academics, what a great place to go for academics.
It's just a really great place to learn.